and gentlemen, welcome back. Here, by the way, it's my last lecture with everyone here today for video game and history of video game console evolution. So today what I want to do is I want to go over a quick review of what we talked about so far, but today's focus will be on Gen 7, 8, 9, as well as a discussion about portable video game consoles as well. Remember, as we talk about all of this, the big theme in all of this, guys, is evolution. Evolution of consoles, evolution of technology, evolution of video games, and how it corresponds alongside, well, basically human evolution. So in regards to where we last left off on the PowerPoint here, there we go. So we last left off talking about Gen 5 and the PS5. Quick rundown again, guys. Remember, Gen number 1, starting in 1972, basically, we have the Magnavox Odyssey. Gen 2, we're talking about 1977. That's going to be the Atari 2600. Gen 3, we're talking about 1983 to 85. That's going to be the NES. Gen 4, we're talking more about 1987, 88. That's going to be the Sega Genesis. As I say the Sega doesn't mean like the main console. And then we got to Gen 5, which was the PS, the beginning of the PlayStation. Now, a few things I did not talk about is that while this was happening, and actually I think we left off here last time, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, what I did not talk about too much was that while all of this is happening, we have another subdivision of consoles, portable consoles. And that is what we're talking a little bit about today, before I go back to Gen 7, 8, 9. So really, in 1999 is when we had, sorry, not 1999, 1989. A little correction there, guys. 1989. So from 1989 to present day, we have this growth of portable consoles. The idea from the very beginning, let me give you a step back. In the 1980s, we would have these things, these little portable games by companies like Tiger Electronics. And these were games that were very basic. They would have a standard fixed background, and then they would have these characters that you could control, usually about 4 or 5 different designs, either fighting games or basketball games or things like that. The Tiger Electronics games were the first step toward creating video games. But they were not consoles because you could not change the games in them. Remember, guys, Pong, as we talked about it, does not count as a console because you could not change games out of it. It's a it was a single game device. So when we say portable consoles, the requirement is that it must be able to have games taken in and out of it. So the very first one that came out in 1989 was this, the original Nintendo Game Boy. I can't explain to you how revolutionary this thing was. My parents actually got this for me when I was 8 years old for Christmas that year, and to this day, it is still my all-time favorite childhood toy of all time. Now, not only because it was an amazing device, but because of just, well, honestly, let me show you a couple things. This is what the games look like for the Game Boy. And what they did, very clever, they took the design of the original Nintendo cartridge and just shrunk it massively. So this actually is what a Nintendo cartridge looks like for the NES. It's going to be a lot bigger. So the Nintendo Game Boy would be able to have these cartridges put into there, and you can play almost any game. This alone made it amazing. The first game that came along with it was actually a game that was very interesting. It's technically a copyright-free game because it was developed in Russia. It's called Tetris. And Tetris was the first major game for the Game Boy and came free with it. The Game Boy was also unique because it was the first console that can connect to other Game Boys via a direct cable, so you can play 2-player live against each other, and not just through points, but actual live 2-player competition. So the Game Boy was a major advancement. The thing is, technologically, you might think it was kind of in the Stone Age because it has only 2 colors, green and gray. It uses a dot matrix display, so you actually have less bits and less graphics than you would on the Nintendo NES. But it still was, light years ahead of anything that was made before that. And what also made Game Boy great is also what made Nintendo great, their library of games. Companies found out that if you don't have proprietary games, you're going to end up losing. You see, big companies survive because they have the games to support them. Whenever you think of Nintendo, what are some characters you guys think of right away? Mario. What else? Luigi.
Pokemon.
Actually, yeah, technically Pokemon too. Well, that's not created by Nintendo, but Nintendo has the rights to it.
Yeah.
What else? Kirby. Excellent. Yes. Link. Zelda. Exactly. So these are original characters, and whenever there's a new game out, you can only get on those systems. So that's what big thing that happened that enabled Nintendo to continue. Their Mario games were huge on the Game Boy. The Game Boy, however, was just phase one. When they saw, by the way, something else, the Game Boy itself, the original Game Boy, used 4 AA batteries to run. So it was just a draining machine. So you can imagine that kids use a lot of batteries to use that. It was with the next generation of Game Boys that they introduced the rechargeable Game Boy battery. Question, yes?
How much, just like an estimate, how much money do you think you spent on batteries for this thing?
God, it's a great question. I couldn't even estimate, but I'll tell you this. I would go with my dad every other week to Costco to get a brick of batteries. Yeah.
Wow.
So a lot.
It was an expensive hobby. It still is.
It really was. But then later on, Nintendo advances, and they, for example, they create over time. This is one of my favorite ones. It's called the Game Boy Advance SP.
Yeah, that one.
And the Game Boy Advance SP is actually made to look like a Nintendo Entertainment System. But what's amazing about it is that it's foldable, of course, full screen, and color as well. Now, Nintendo got the idea of color more from this next console right here, the Sega Game Gear. The Sega Game Gear actually came out around 1991, a couple of years after the Nintendo Game Boy. The Game Gear, in terms of color and in terms of graphics, were way more advanced than the Game Boy. But what's interesting though, it did not exceed the Game Boy in sales. The Game Boy still dominated in sales for 2 big reasons. I said before, the video game library was definitely a big reason. The other reason, cost. Cost is going to be a big factor. So the Nintendo Game Boy, back in the 1980s and 90s, it cost about $80 to $100, which is not cheap but not horrible. But the Game Gear cost about $250. So you can imagine more than double, people are going to buy the cheaper one because it has a great library of games, it works great, and Nintendo has already built by this point a massive reputation for being, a relatively good company for its customers. But the Game Gear did inspire Nintendo to have to go in a different direction. So Game Boy, will soon change to also add color, to add touch screens with a stylus pen, to add double screens as well, the Game Boy DS, 3D capability as well. They actually developed a screen that without glasses works like a 3D screen where the images kind of pop out. It's really amazing technology. Question, yeah.
Were there any handhelds that use CDs?
Say again?
Were there any handhelds that use CDs?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that. PSP.
Oh.
In fact, PlayStation, again, they entered the market, in the late 90s, and by the early 2000s, PlayStation also comes out with this, the PSP portable game system. This is more than just a portable game system. This actually said, let me show you, get disc-based CDs, mini discs.
What game is that?
This right here is a Simpsons game.
Oh.
But what's amazing about this is that it also plays movies. So I remember I had this when I went with my wife on her honeymoon, and it was a long plane ride. So I bought a bunch of TV shows. I bought Family Guy, Simpsons. I bought Once Upon a Time in Mexico, and all of these movies, because these are UMD discs, Universal Media discs. So the UMDs play on the PSP. So these are CD-based portable devices. It also is Wi-Fi enabled. So you're able then to also go on your browser, download whatever you want, and to make it more like a computer, every PSP also needs a memory card. So basically, guys, what do you have here? You got basically a computer. You have a full computer right here.
What year was that made?
This was made around 2001.
Oh.
Yeah. So the PSP takes that disc idea. So over time, you might be wondering, well, where are the modern mini consoles? Where are the modern portable consoles? Some things have changed. For example, phones have made it to the point where consoles, portable consoles, are no longer in demand as much. You can download full video games on your cell phones now. So as a result, the demand has fallen dramatically for these portable consoles. Yes?
I know there are like extensions like you plug in or like connect your phone via Bluetooth.
Yeah.
And you can like actually like add like the controls on like the phone.
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But even in regards to capability, the phones have the capability of handling games that would be like console level games.
Yeah.
I recently bought Knights of the Old Republic on my phone. Huh? KOTOR, yeah. And that's a game that came out originally for the Xbox and the PS2, but it's now on your phone. A full console game on your phone.
Like the new iPhone coming out, they had like this whole like presentation recently. Beverly, you know the RE4 remake that just came out this year?
Yes.
They're putting that onto that.
Are they really?
Yeah. I don't know how that works because I feel like it would catch on fire, but it sounds ridiculous.
It might.
It's insane.
Now, what I want to show you is a mistake Nintendo made at one point.
Oh yeah, this thing.
Yes. Now, Nintendo, you might think, I say a lot of things about Nintendo, and they're a great company, but they're not perfect. So there's a famous mistake that they made when they entered the portable market with what's called the Virtual Boy. Their Game Boys were amazing, and they tried to go into this weird 3D area while they were still developing their Nintendo GameCube and whatnot. So let me show you a little clip. Again, this is the last clip from us from the Angry Video Game Nerd. Yes?
What is a GameCube?
Oh, great question. So the GameCube, we'll get to a little bit later, was actually part of Nintendo's Gen 6. It was another mini disc-based game system. It literally is like it's like a cube. That's what they call the GameCube. And the GameCube games, by the way, if you guys are checking them out, I brought an example of almost every console game up here. The GameCube games are also mini discs. Yeah.
Why are you so shocked?
Yeah. Yeah. So this is what the GameCube games look like. These little mini discs.
Real compact.
And GameCube, I assume, like, is a separate display like system. It's not like displaying on the cube, right?
No, it's not. It's a Nintendo system, so like the NES, like the Wii. You need a TV to plug it into to work.
So this is separate from like the handheld. Like,
Yes,
okay.
that's why Nintendo Modern has the Switch, and the Switch is one of Nintendo's best inventions because it's both a console and a portable console simultaneously. The Switch enables you to connect it to your TV directly. But the Switch also has these little controllers so that you can actually take it anywhere you want to go and play it as a portable screen with you. So Nintendo combined portable and desktop consoles with one device, and it honestly was a huge hit. It's one of their best devices in decades. And here's the thing about Nintendo GameCube. GameCube was actually a great device, but it got a reputation of being a device or a console for little kids. Like, when my wife used to work at GameStop back in the day, and parents would come in and say, I have like a 5-year-old, what do you recommend for them? Usually for the younger kids, they recommend the Nintendos. And the reason why they recommend the Nintendos is because they're more intuitive in regards to gaming, they're less complicated, and the games are usually less adult in nature. Exactly. You're not gonna get, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas on a Nintendo GameCube. It's not gonna happen. Yeah.
I was gonna say that as time has gone on, Nintendo slowly more and more trying to just broaden their scope when it came to their maturity rate.
Oh yeah.
Like they own Bayonetta now.
By the way,
this is only on Nintendo.
Also, this is what a Nintendo GameCube controller looks like.
I love those. This is
one of the weirdest controllers, but it's still pretty cool though.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me show you this clip real quick. Okay, so Nintendo tried to come out with this temporary device called the Virtual Boy. It is a joke, and you're gonna love it because you guys know this guy loves to say his mind.
The first problem was that it was marketed as a portable system. Yeah, portable. My ass is portable. You could barely find a comfortable way to play this big red ugly piece of shit at home, let alone bring it somewhere. Like you couldn't play in a car or something like that. And come to think of it, you wouldn't want to play this thing in public anyway. You look like an asshole.
It literally took Nintendo 20 years to realize that they needed a head strap for for their devices.
Oh yeah, right.
And no joke, 20 years it took them to realize that. Yeah.
Did you ever buy the lotto when it came out?
No, I did not.
I never did either.
Why isn't there a head strap? Let's think about this. This must be one of the worst designs for any invention in history. It's basically a pair of goggles on a stand. To me, that translates to a pair of eyeballs on legs. The controller's really weird too. It has 2 D-pads and the battery pack is attached to it. You can swap it with an AC adapter, but when you're playing on a table, it can come loose and shut off your game. The 3D effects are hard to focus and they strain your eyes. There was even a warning on the box that said it could cause headaches and seizures. That's great, right? It's like the cherry on the shit sundae. How would you like to play bad games and have a headache too? But before I say the games are bad, let's take an honest look. Unfortunately, the only way I can record these games is to zoom into the eyepiece, so please excuse the guerrilla-style videography. Let's begin with Mario's Tennis. This was one of the first Virtual Boy games to be released, and it's usually the first one that most people have played. It starts out with Mario hitting a tennis ball right into your face. The 3D effect is actually pretty effective, but without experiencing the actual game, you can't see it. Now, the main thing that disappointed everybody right from the beginning was the fact that the games are all in red and black. Now, the original Game Boy was in black and white, or black and greenish yellow, whatever, but the Virtual Boy was supposed to be cutting edge, so it was fair to expect it to be in color. What a letdown. Now, as for the game itself, it's just tennis, but with a selection of Mario characters. Not bad, but nothing special. The big problem for me personally, what the hell kind of virtual reality game is this? I don't feel like I'm on the court interacting. I would have expected this to be in a first-person perspective. The whole idea of virtual reality is to simulate the experience of the game like you're actually in the environment. It's supposed to feel like reality, hence the term virtual reality. Here's another one, Galactic Pinball. Well, it's just a pinball game with a space theme. The 3D effects are pretty shallow on this one. Nothing ever really comes up in your face. To use the paddles, you hit the buttons on the bottom of the controller, which feels like using a real pinball machine, but you expect to be able to hit the button harder to hit the ball harder. So in the long run, it just makes you wish you were playing a real pinball machine instead, or anything other than this. I feel like I'm taking an eye exam. And speaking of that, my eyes are starting to hurt already. If you play this long enough and go blind, you can really become the pinball wizard. Okay, now we have Telro Boxer.
By the way, this review is actually only 15 minutes long. I'll stop it there. Do you guys know why it's only 15 minutes? This is the entire Virtual Boy library. They came out with a total of 12 games. So even Nintendo admitted this was a failure. But why do I bring it up then? 2 things. To show you that Nintendo's not perfect, but it does kind of hint at where they're going. Question.
Wait, so what year was this one?
The Virtual Boy specifically came out around 1994.
Wait, so they already had like some sort of idea of virtual reality in 1994?
Oh yeah.
Really?
Oh yes. In fact, here, let me see something real quick here.
That's kind of great.
Question, yes.
I was wondering, is that the first case of Mario Tennis? Like, is that the first Mario Tennis game?
It actually is the very first ever Mario Tennis. So
Oh.
that's actually a pretty cool thing for that.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, let me tell you what year virtual reality began to be created.
Jacob Archer.
The first virtual reality headset was actually created in 1968.
So that's not the same level.
No, but it is a headset, an actual headset. All right, back to the notes. So the Sega Game Gear, red to color, Sony PSP, definitely a big advancement. But as we said earlier, the Nintendo Switch, which actually technically is going to be Gen 8, is going to be the first device that combines portable and mainstream console together. Something you should know, except for the NES, Nintendo was playing catch-up for generations 4, 5, 6, 7. The PlayStation outsold Nintendo and Sega massively. Even the Genesis outsold Nintendo before the PlayStation came out. Nintendo had a big hit with the NES. Then they were playing third place with the GameCube, with even the Wii, which by the way was a great device, but it was still kind of seen as being remedial compared to the PlayStation and the Xbox One at that point. So it was not until really 2018 that Nintendo kind of regained their foothold, and now now Xbox is in third place overall, and number one is PS5 and Nintendo Switch. Yes.
On like a tech level though, they're still behind. Like,
Nintendo?
Yeah.
Oh God, yes.
Yeah.
Now on a tech level, the Xbox is actually the most advanced systems.
Yeah.
But they have to catch up a lot more on their ability. They have the capability to be amazing games, but the games will take advantage of what the systems have.
I was gonna say because Mortal Kombat 1 just came out. They had like a Switch version of it. Have you seen any of the screenshots of it? Because,
Yeah. Yeah.
It looks abysmal.
It does look bad.
Yeah.
By the way, Nintendo makes money off of both the console and the games. Same with PlayStation. In America, Xbox, Microsoft company, for the first 8 years, Microsoft actually lost money on every console they sold. Because they were trying to do two things: to broaden their software market, because again, I said they realized where the real money was in the software, not the hardware, and they were trying to establish themselves as a major game giant. Unfortunately, to this day, there's a major stigma in Japan against American-made video game companies.
What? They don't like Minecraft?
They don't need Minecraft.
Who doesn't?
They don't need it. The thing is, they would much rather support any kind of Japanese-based video game console than an American video game console.
Wait, is that like Sony?
Sony's Japanese, Nintendo's Japanese. Huh? That's Nintendo.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so Nintendo's Japanese, Sony is Japanese, Sega is Japanese, Konami is Japanese. Oh, in fact, let me show you another little video here. You might find this interesting.
Xbox One for like 2016.
Let me show you some of the sales in the console wars over the years. They're actually really informative too.
They're like addicting.
Just give it a little faster playback speed.
Really?
All right, so these show you the sales of the console wars. So we're starting in 2002. PlayStation is by far the most dominant, and PS2 was. It's the more PlayStations were sold than any other of the generation. Then we have Xbox, PlayStation 1, GameCube, Nintendo 64, PS3. Now look at what happens over time to these. Here's how the sales will work out over time.
How is Wii so low?
That was just after time.
Oh.
It hasn't come out yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're not out yet. They will be.
It's just all time. Sometimes things happen before or after other events.
So notice the GameCube is growing dramatically. It overtakes the Xbox eventually.
Yeah, I love the Wii.
But then Xbox comes back. By the way, what usually causes these big jumps, you think? Remember, Xbox fell behind and then they came back forward? New games. I'm going to tell you what came out in 04. The first ever major, because the thing, Xbox has a major advantage over Sony and Nintendo in that they were the first to create online capability for their games. To join onto Xbox Live, to play with other people at any given time around the world. Because of this, when a new game came out that enabled them to take advantage of this online capability, it was huge. In early 2000s, we had a certain game came out that was called Halo 2. And Halo 2 was revolutionary for Slayer matches, for group matches, for battles. I mean, it changed everything. PlayStation Online did not even really get started until about PS3. And even then, it was slow and crappy. And over the past few years, Sony has actually had at least 3 different break-ins where they've lost confidential information on their accounts. Microsoft has never had that happen once.
Yeah.
Oh, there.
So, yes.
Actually, actually, this is technically Xbox because they own Bethesda now. Literally last night, there was like a bunch of leaks of Bethesda games that are going to be coming out.
I'm talking about accounts on the online servers. Like,
Oh, that's what I know.
yeah, like my personal account information.
Yeah.
Okay, now notice, the GameCube is growing, the Nintendo DS.
Oh,
That's what I talked about today, guys. You understand just how big it was. The DS becomes a more dominant system because of its portability,
What
because of its...
did the DS look like? I have the 3DS. I know what that one is.
It's just the same thing but less curvy. It's like box.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And smaller. Less curvy.
Notice the PSP is now competing as well.
Was the Nintendo 2DS was that a hit? I feel like nobody bought it.
Well, it was because it was the next evolution from where it was. I'll tell you an idea. Nintendo actually would do even dumber things. Like before the 2DS, they had regular Game Boys, but what they did is that they made the plastic different colors. So even though it was still like a green screen, they would have like, you know, a green body or a red body or a purple body, but that was the only difference. So people would buy these different consoles, different portable consoles, just to have every color that there was. So here we are in 07. DS is still dominant. Nintendo's pretty strong. But just look at PS3 climbing in numbers.
Wow.
We.
Oh, yeah.
There's like nothing on the PS2 that's like really iconic.
Why
But
is
the
the
360 comes up
Why
now.
is the PSP still above the PS2?
I had a 360 until.
The PSP, well, remember this is in regards to total sales, and people at this point, instead of buying a PS2, some people would buy a PS3 instead because they were backwards compatible. So if you buy a PS3, you don't have to buy a PS2, you can play all the old PS2 games on it.
Oh, backwards compatible means like games can go from unit to unit.
Yeah, old, from previous version to previous version. You can't play Xbox games on a PlayStation, but for example, on the Xbox 360, you can play old Xbox games. On PS3, you can play old PS2 or PS1 games. So that by making them backwards compatible, people would buy this instead of this. But the PSP being a portable market and playing movies and having online ability, if people were going to get a PS3, they probably bought, if people were going to buy one of these two, they would buy this as well. Yes?
So I know the PS2 could play PlayStation games, but the PS3 played PlayStation 2 and PlayStation games, or would it end PS2?
Only it plays all PS2 and some PS games, not all of them.
Could it play PS1?
Yes.
Oh, okay, cool.
So overall, now we're in 2010.
Another result. I own the physical copy of it.
Oh, freaking commercials.
It's just a mean game, but it's got so much I don't know.
Now I want you guys to watch what happens when the PS4 comes out. Oh, here's the 3DS. We have a new challenger.
I contributed to that.
My
The 3DS was amazing.
Yeah.
Dude, I bought a 2DS off the site for like very cheap. With my 3DS,
Jonas and I had 3DSs. Johnny got a 2.
By the way, the PS Vita is a PSP style system that does not take discs. It's only through digital downloads. And that's also a new development because in 2012 they started to just do digital downloads. Today, whatever system you have, the majority of games today are purchased online through digital downloads instead of physical copies.
It's just so much easier.
It is. And it started in 2012 with the PS Vita, the online version of this.
Yeah, and you can also buy like those things like
Expansion
extension.
packs.
Yeah, on like
who the hell buys a DLC in person?
I don't know. I remember Jonas used to buy them all for like a rental store for a while. Put the plastic plate in the plastic bag.
Oh, did you notice that? Did you see that jump?
Wait, what was it? Wait, go back.
Guys, look how quick the PS4 jumps up. That's to tell you how people were foaming at the mouth for this system when it came out.
It's gonna end, bro. We have like
Ready?
2 minutes left.
Let's just jump in there.
Was this like people that would camp outside like the stores to get their
Yes.
Then
I'm telling you, the PS4 dominated. Sony had a moneymaker on their
What
hands.
about Xbox One?
Xbox.
It's strong in North America, but not outside of North America.
So bad.
Oh, I have that.
Compared to I'm just saying, like games wise, PlayStation.
Oh, Wii U. I contributed to that one too.
Yeah.
Dude, I was crazy on Wii U.
Yes, question.
Was there like a main reason, or is it just like because of sales that PS4 and Xbox like they lasted like so many years without even like did the PS5 only come out like last year or this year?
Yeah. Well, no, actually, the PS5 came out 3 years ago.
Oh really? Oh
Yeah.
But it lasted all this time because of like sales just kept going up and so there was no need.
And because when the PS5 comes out, the PS4 becomes cheaper. People are going to buy that too.
Yeah, baby.
Company take away my
console, portable, and desk console. And now look at this. It's not even close until we're for PS5 now.
Wait for Xbox Series.
Oh yeah, dude, I remember all my
Xbox Series.
It
I
was
love
like a
Xbox,
box.
it's a better system, but no, the
It's a
sales.
monolith. You're supposed to pray to it every night.
So guys, still to this day, the two most dominant brands in video game consoles, Nintendo and PlayStation. Sega is not a console company anymore. They're only software.
They're just Sonic.
And Xbox is competing, and they're the biggest in North America, but they have a lot to do to catch up in Japan.
Sonic doesn't make consoles anymore. Sony.
Wait, who owns? Wait, Sonic is on.
See, Sonic is owned by Sega, which is a company. They don't make consoles anymore.
Yeah.
They still do, yeah. They own Atlas, which the guys make consoles.
Sega makes it. Oh, Atari. I know what Atari is.
Hoyoverse? Who makes
Hoyoverse. Hoyoverse.
Wow.
So to this day, overall, the PS2 has sold more units than any other console in existence so far. Yeah.
I remember back when the PS5 first came out, I remember I spent like 5 months just every single day like logging on. They had this thing called like PS Direct, where like if you did, you got like a queue. You had like a chance of getting a chance of buying the PS5. I spent like 5 months every single, because it was during COVID. Because I was doing online work. I just wake up and then while I look on the side, I would have it open just in case. It took me 5 months just constantly trying to do it.
Seriously?
And then I eventually got one. Yeah, it took me like 5 months.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With like online PC games, they just affect a lot of sales.
The effect, yes, because here's the thing, it depends on the game itself, but some games will never come out on PC. And so if they never come out on PC, nothing to worry about.
And are they still like are they more popular?
I could sell
Like in general speaking, like
No. PC games always sell less than console games. The only exception would be PC games that are sold on both PC and console.
Of course I am.
Yeah. But otherwise, PC games are not ever as high of a big sellers as console games are.
they're like
Oh yes, absolutely, absolutely. Now the last thing I want to say for today real quick, guys,
I reckon that's pretty cool.
nostalgia brings us back full circle in regards to video games.
Where's Roblox?
Yeah.
Nostalgia.
Where is Star Rail?
Guys, do you ever wonder why Roblox and not Fortnite, Roblox especially, no, Roblox especially, if you notice, uses 16-bit graphics. And they do that for a reason, because they want to kind of emulate that old style of gaming. Because here's the thing, when I was a kid, adults viewed video games as just for kids. Society has changed. Humans have evolved. And by that I mean that I view video games as not necessarily just a toy, but a tool that we can use for society. So when I see video games coming out in the market, new ones, I'm really excited about it to see what they can do, what we can use them for. Heck, even education, we can use these new programs. A lot. And guys, we've been using programs in computers in education since the 1980s. How many of you played Oregon Trail back in the day? A few of you.
We're like
Now, the reason why I bring all that up, as I was saying, is because with the 16-bit Minecraft and with these new emulators, like when I showed you the Nintendo emulators, nostalgia is what bringing us back to kind of full circle again. Video games, like humanity, will constantly evolve. VR headsets. How many of you have ever tried the Oculus Rift headset? How amazing is that? And imagine when the Oculus Rift headset or something similar would be applied to console gaming, because they're going to get there very, very soon. On top of that, guys, I think you should know, video games, as we know it, has gone beyond just technology and entertainment. It's beyond that. It's part of our cultural zeitgeist. There's a book and a movie, which I very much recommend to all of you guys, called Ready Player One.
Oh, I've seen
Oh,
that.
I watched that.
And the book is great. The movie's not bad.
The book is always better.
But the book's way better, yes. And the idea behind Ready Player One, it's obviously it's a world in the future where video games and pop culture go beyond just face value. We are there now, basically, guys. We basically are there now. So in regards to my final note about all of this, is that how you view video games really kind of is how you view the world. In that, if you view video games as something for kids, you probably will never get out of it what you, the most potential you could out of it. Today, video games are used not only in regards to entertainment, as I said at the beginning of the lecture series, they're used in the military for training as well. They're used in piloting programs to help, train new airline pilots. They're used in surgeries to help prepare surgeons for microsurgery, which is going to be a more growing thing in the future. Yes.
So would you say I understand they can be used with really good stuff, but that's only the educational video games, right? What would you use the strictly entertainment based video games for?
Can I answer
as
that
far as
question?
system?
Go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say was that this kind of goes for all forms of media, but a lot of a lot of these things tell tell a story, and tell a lot of things have stories to them. And if you're willing to analyze stuff and try to find meaning in things, you can often find things that will make your life better. For example, with myself, good example that was when I played Dark Souls for the first time. Honestly, that game's overall message really should help me honestly try harder challenges in life.
Wait, why were you here, right?
Now, there's also another. Thank you for showing that.
Honest,
There's also another example. I mentioned at the beginning of this whole lecture series, is that we can actually start using the entertainment aspect for medicinal purposes. There might be individuals who maybe because of chemical reasons or psychological reasons, might unfortunately be more inclined toward violence. And we can use these video games as a way for individuals to cathartically release their desires without physically hurting someone else. Now, we have a whole other moral question then as to whether or not we should be designing games or events that would be viewed as criminal activities in the real world. But then the counter argument is, would you rather have someone committing these crimes in reality or virtually? And so it's a question that we still have to discuss. Psychologists use video games a lot actually to help people deal with repressed memories and other experiences. PTSD is actually a great way that can be treated through video games actually.
How? You ever play Silent Hill?
Not Silent Hill. No, but in reality, seriously though, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not going to go into detail behind it. But there actually are certain games and certain things that can be done that can help people by helping you relive a certain event in a safe environment, it enables you to psychologically deal with that event a lot better, to hopefully gain closure, to be able to move on past that event, as opposed to, having to face it in real life and then God knows what might happen. So,
That's interesting.
guys, I hope you enjoyed my lecture on video games. And for the last few minutes, want to play Nintendo again?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it.